Hola, hola. I'm Trek with two Ks,
And I am 3D, and welcome to Metaverses The Other Side.
brought to you here on the Gentleman of Crypto Network. Just a heads up, this episode is before we had the idea of bringing the Twitter spaces to the Gentleman of Crypto Network. And so that's why we're talking about the stuff that we're talking about in this episode.
Coming back at it from the perspective of blockchain, I think in the near future, we're going to see centralized, immersive metaverses, yes. But I think soon after that, there's going to be people who are pissed off and stuff because centralization, there's issues. Even if the creators or companies themselves aren't assholes, the government that has the legal system usually meddles too much. So soon after that, I think a successful metaverse is probably going to start centralized first, but then there's going to be either they're going to change and pivot, or they're going to have a competitor who comes out from nowhere, and that competitor is going to be a blockchain metaverse. Now, granted, we already have blockchain metaverses, but that's not the point. I don't think they're very popular. I'm talking about the ones that blow up and get like mass users, like massive amounts of users, like on the amount of Facebook and Twitter, like that many users. Um, Gradually, I think we're gonna go to the blockchain. And because it, or not even just the blockchain, it might be a federated system that's hosted on different nodes that's not necessarily a blockchain, but is still decentralized because it has a federated node system. So it's either going to be a blockchain or a federated node system that shares the data, kind of like IPFS, interplanetary file system and stuff like that. And in that case, I think that there's going to be some people who decide, hey, we built on this decentralized gaming system, and our section of the metaverse is a free for all. And to take it further, I think we're going to see the dark web, the dark net, be imported into the metaverse when that metaverse is on a decentralized system, whether it's federated or on the blockchain, either way. But as for centralized systems, we're not going to see that. But I think to have this become popular and mainstream, there's going to be a company that centralizes it first, and then they're going to have to not just blow up in popularity, but something's going to have to trigger, or something's going to have to like make them fall apart, whether it's a competitor or the legal system. Something traumatic has to happen for then
I
the
don't know
user
how to hit the
to,
hold
to
your
be.
hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, to motivate the users to then switch over to a decentralized system. I think that's how it's going to pan out.
I was waiting for you to finish thought. Hey, Ground, thanks for joining.
Yeah, it's ground
So
guy Gary without the R.
okay, Ground Guy Gary, got you. So
Sorry, with the R.
have you seen Hack Sign?
No, is that
like a
anime
video game?
Yeah, so well, we were talking in particular about the anime, but it did start from a video game.
I'd like to
throw my two cents out there
about
like
video games and the whole like metaverse currency. I personally studied currency. Me and my one ex-boss, we set up a whole basement, and we had a projector. And he's like, here, you need to learn about currency and how it's exchanged with decentralization. And back in the day, have you guys ever heard of the game Second Life? You know what I'm talking about, Second Life?
Yeah.
Yeah, so when people were taking their real currency and they were spending it on Second Life points, then it's a fancy word. Like I forgot exactly what the fancy word is called for it, but you're essentially spending like real USD dollar and you're turning it into this sort of currency that isn't real, but you're able to like because people would be like, hey, dude, give me your Second Life dollars. And then what they did with that was they would sell their Google Play accounts or like they would sell their Second Life accounts for like a certain price. So when people start making video games and they start building on these accounts, they actually take their account, like they'll set up an email, like, and they'll go to someone lower that like is just starting, but they want to have all this shit, and the person spent all the time like building up their metaverse account. So what they're gonna do is they're gonna sell metaverse accounts to lower based people so they can have all the higher up shit. Do you guys get what I'm saying?
100%. Me and 3D been talking about this for months. Yeah, we've talked about stuff like this for a while, bro. So yeah, we 100% get what you're saying.
I lived through all of that, and it wasn't just Second Life. There's IMVU. I don't know if you're familiar with IMVU. People actually had shops to sell avatar skins and clothing and stuff. It was basically a chat room with avatars. It's exactly what Facebook's doing. So I don't know what the fuck Facebook's doing, but they're repeating IMVU. And then World of Warcraft actually was known for selling accounts to lower users because they would build up their accounts with the fancy weapons. But here's the issue with all of those. It wasn't really groundbreaking because, again, those are centralized systems. So a lot of those places, not really IMVU, but like WoW, World of Warcraft, cracked down on some of the activity because it was a centralized game. And like I said earlier, that's why I think users are going to be motivated to go to a federated decentralized system or a decentralized blockchain system, either or, because I mean, even if World of Warcraft allowed it, there's still legal and tax issues. Like the IRS is cracking down nowadays on, and this is not crypto related, they're cracking down on regular in-game like sold items of gaming like tokens that have nothing to do with crypto. Like they're just made up stupid tokens issued by the centralized stuff. Now they're not treated as security because the gaming companies are like, hey, don't sell this on the open market. And they try to police it, but they fail. So regardless of that mess, what I'm trying to say is now the IRS has already stepped in and they're telling users that if you sell like a fancy axe in game, like a weapon, an axe, to another user, you have to claim that as income. So, like, this has already happened, and I think, and it's already happened to the point where there's already regulation for it. And again, that just brings me back to the whole point of someone's going to make it super popular and there's going to be more incentive to move it to the decentralized systems because that's the only way this will pan out, because otherwise it'll always be stifling innovation within a centralized structure.
Yeah, I got into like Call of Duty Mobile, dude, and I noticed there was a bunch of people on there making accounts, and even women on there trying to get people for their Google Play dollars.
I don't know if you guys remember this far back, but during Diablo 2, there was a Diablo 1 item in Diablo 2 that came up in the online area. And it's the Staff of Armageddon, kills everything, right? And I mean, if I'm right, it can actually kill like anything on the screen, I think it was, or something like that. And it got sold on eBay, and I think it was IRS or some agency got a hold of the person and made them pay taxes on that sell, on top of what they had to pay through, the service or whatever. And that was the first time I ever heard of an agency coming in and stepping in. And as for Airman's saying, yeah, that's kind of the ideal of the NFTs, isn't it? For a lot of people with NFTs want to be able to transfer game items in a manner to where they can't come and do something like that because it was a sell for US dollar on a registered money system or money transferring system. But I do remember like they had sold the stuff Armageddon for I don't remember how many hundreds of thousands of dollars. It was close to $1 million or something like that. But I just remember they did the exchange in game instead of sending the account. They actually they went somewhere and there was a bunch of people just kind of watching because everybody was trying to get it as soon as it hit the ground. Everybody tried to get it, um, and it being sold like that was kind of sketch. So being able to switch to a more decentralized system definitely would assist in those types of things.
All right, got to do a little bit of housekeeping once again. We generally try to keep these to an hour just because of how we have to deal with the YouTube side of it for the syndication side going on. But we do definitely try to encourage interaction and conversation. We appreciate Amaris and Ground Guy Gary for coming in on this. And yeah, definitely appreciate that. Like you're doing some stuff, Gary, in the space and like metaverses. That's pretty much what we are always talking about on these Thursday nights on Metaverses the Other Side. I think this is gonna end up being our last anime movie series kind of review. We're gonna change the format up a little bit for the next recording, which is next Thursday at 8 p.m. We're gonna try something different, and we're gonna see how it goes. The basic idea is trying to pick a couple of news stories that happened, and then like expand on them, and then we always encourage the audience to come through and join us in discussion on whatever it is we're talking about as it relates to metaverses and stuff. What is the other thing? Amaris, you had said something earlier about like the whole thing of like the dark net and stuff like that. X3D, I've been saying this for a minute now. Metaverses are going to follow the same path as the internet in regards to websites and the whole thing of like there's going to be the clear net side of metaverse and then there's going to be the dark verses. And I 100% agree with you as far as I think that for the traditional business model of how the gaming industry works and how centralization works in business models and what is the current like everyone can do it revenue model, it works now because the technology hasn't proliferated yet. And I think the regulation is still looking at this old model, but when the new stuff comes in for the tech, that's going to be the part that's like, all right, the regulation is killing the old model, and the companies are going to realize like we could only do but so much to keep the users here. And like you said, someone's going to come in with the quote innovation and be like, all right, well, I'm doing this over here, and like you just come over and do what you're going to do. Like and I wasn't the first person to come up with this particular thought about how crypto wallets are going to matter way more before the end of this decade. That point you had made, oh, Gary left. He made a point about the whole selling of the accounts. Like we all know about that side of it. Before we're talking about selling accounts, and like selling accounts in games is a matter of like the items that are connected to the account in that game. The wallets change the dynamic because now it's, oh, how old is this wallet? How far back does it go on a chain? In addition to what is in the wallet, what NFT assets are in this wallet, it's also what is the timeline of this wallet. Obviously the older wallets are going to have, well, at least how my metric thought process is, the older wallets will have a higher value than newer created wallets, even if they have highly valuable items in them. And I'm talking about wallet addresses specifically because, as we know, with the way the wallets work now,
you can have multiple addresses. But I also do think that we're gonna go through the phase of where like KYC gets pushed down heavy on the crypto wallets, and we're gonna go through some real bullshit on the KYC side stuff for crypto wallets, because to that point that you made too, Amaris, about like the IRS is already like taking actions against people for just in-game stuff. Like what do you do with the 8-year-old who figured out that he could make an item and then sell it? Like there's way too many people you would have to go after. And then what do you do about these games that are crossing jurisdictions? Like that's not an American citizen, so how do you go after them? Like what do you do with that? So it's gonna be a lot of growing pains. But I guess the least thing to say is like I'm just here for it. Like, and I'll experience it with the rest of y'all, and we will have more stories to share, and events like this to talk about what we've seen and experienced in this thing. And to like kind of wrap it back into the whole thing with HackSign, I think that on surface, like, yeah, there's the story and everything about it, but like when you really start digging in on the tech side of it, it for as early as it was, it definitely made me ask a number of questions on the technical side for where we are now and what we can move towards. So you can go. Sorry, ramble.
No, that's okay. But I was just gonna like go back to what I forget his name was, but he left. But you also brought it up too. The in-game items and in-game currency, which is strictly in-game and has no outside influence. Like it doesn't trade like a forex, whereas crypto is kind of like an alternative forex, if you think about it, a foreign exchange, with currencies. Going back to HackSign, yo, like I know HackSign did not have this in the anime or game, but just take for a moment to imagine, what would you imagine, like whether it's centralized or decentralized, having crypto in the game? So not only can you earn crypto within the game, but it can be imported from outside, like an exchange, into the game. So then if the main character is trapped in the game, like they would only be able to access what's in that game and not the outside currency. But here's the bigger kicker. Like, yo, bringing it like forward into our time, like how would HackSign integrate the idea of having IoT, Internet of Things devices, transferring crypto along with the in-game players? Like, what if their headsets had to communicate with a crypto beside the in-game player actually spending crypto at like a fair or an event or a market? But then on top of that, since HackSign had like an AI, it was implied that it had AI. And then Aurora was like a created entity from what I remember. Like, how is the IRS going to regulate an AI, a machine learning entity? I mean, granted, even if it's not sentient, because we're nowhere near sentient, in my opinion. So it's just something like the chatbots. Like the chatbots could be sharing currency between the chatbots. And like it's one thing to say, oh, it's owned by this wallet, by this address. But then what if we create a system where the AI like can generate its own address and no human has access to it? Like, how would HackSign have been different if the AI could self-generate its wallet and like the God mode guy couldn't even access it? Like it was strictly like encrypted in the game through the AI generation, and only the AI had its own wallet. How the fuck is the legal system going to enforce that? Like, how are you going to tax completely like I don't know what you call it, like figmentations, like imaginary freaking AIs that like operate, but they're not real. Like, Yo, I think someone should make, actually, now saying this, someone should make this just to fuck with the IRS. Someone should make a machine learning, the like automation thing that creates its own wallets without bleeding it out to the internet or its creator, and then have it interact with other people and just fuck with every country on earth. Like, I don't know how it would make money, but somehow it has to know how to make the crypto too. Maybe it could have like a Monero miner in the background, something, but this would be wild. But to bring it back to Hack Sign, I wonder how the anime would be different if the AI or Aurora could generate real world cryptocurrency. But go ahead. That's what I wanted to say.
All right. So funny enough that you brought up the thing about the AI. So I forgot what I was listening to, and they were talking about how what the pharmaceutical companies are doing right now is they're looking to use AI to be able to come up with um the model testing to be like, all right, what molecules work to be able to make blah blah blah, what has the best chance of success. Once they figure out, all right, this is the thing that's going to work or has the highest thing, and it's the most, and like this is a unique molecule or this is a unique substance that we've created, the second phase is to be able to have the um AI file for the patent. Now, my thought process was that, oh, you can only be a human being filing for a patent, because if you try to do what is it, you can't trademark or you can't copyright like AI generated art. Like, no, what was it, because there's an artist, there's a artist guy who was trying to use it where the AI that he made that did AI generative art, he was trying to get it that he could either patent or trademark the artwork via, like, not him himself, but he wanted it for the AI software to be able to do it. And the office that deals with it was like, well, no, you can't do that because the source has to come from like the basic human creativity element. They argued some humanistic shit. So what I think though is in going to what you were saying about like how would AI, like, and I think Andreas and Synopsis used to talk about this shit like early, like, but not necessarily AI, but like that whole thing of like what happens when you have devices and machines that have their own wallet and things are happening where they're doing microtransactions, like
Yeah,
at
yeah,
that
we
point.
did, we did talk about that.
You did? Okay. So like at that point, it's just like, yeah, like the rules and what we understand have to change. I personally feel that the same thing applies to DAOs right now, which is there is no legal structure that is in current existence that works with what DAOs are intended and designed to be. And the reason why I say this is because you can't go into a court and be like, oh, I'm a DAO, blah, 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 blah. It's like, no, I'm an LLC and I'm the wrapper for a DAO. That's like, so I think that what you said is like spot on. And at some point, and not like tomorrow, like I said, like we're gonna go through the growing pains, but like the legal structures and definitions and like parameters of how these rules and laws and policies are put up, they're going to have to change. And I think the butting head part of it is, as fast as the technology is moving, and then with the geopolitical shifting thing, it's like, well, what country's gonna go first? Who's gonna do it? Like, who's gonna be like, you know what, we're gonna call it, like, we're gonna accept this as the blah blah blah, and then we're gonna push heavy on it. And even though, you know, the bigger quote powers might be like, well, no, you can't do that. Look at El Salvador right now. Look at the Central Republic of Africa right now. Like, they're pushing on the whole Bitcoin thing, and then everybody else is like, well, no, 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 whoa, 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 slow your roll. You can't do it. It's like, but the technology is here. it works. It does what it's supposed to do. On a side note, OFAC, which is under the Treasury Department, just came out and kind of had to sideways admit that they couldn't shut down Tornado Cash, even though they got your guy, what's his name, over in Europe. He's still sitting in jail. They confiscated all of his like assets and stuff like that, and his wife is going through it. But with as sad as that part is, because they didn't give him charges until like way after the fact. The technology still worked. The technology is still working. Like that's the part that's really throwing it off. It's like people are putting out these technologies that they don't need to sit there and like hover their finger over the off and on switch. And I honestly, there was a part, I don't know if Amaris, did you watch like the last episode, which episode 27 was kind of a throwaway episode to me, but the 28th episode, and I'm kind of wrapping this back around to it because we're about closing on time. The place where they had the party was apparently like one of the not so popular sections of the world. And then one of the old school hackers came in when he was talking to like Nebulous or something like that, and he was like, hey, do you want me to make this like one of the main activity points? And then she was like, nah, we're gonna leave it how it is. I want it to stay just how it is, in that like it was one of the offshoot places that people go, and it wasn't as what's the word, it wasn't as, not active, but it wasn't as like conformed as all of the other more popular places. It was just like this is, I don't want to say the Wild Wild West, but that's kind of the impression I got about it. But it was like one of the kind of forgotten places within that virtual world. Where was I going? My point is that technology, the underlying technology of servers, of being able to have decentralized storage, of being able to have it that people had access no matter where they were. Like in the overall, I look at these metaverse stories and these different things that we've been looking at over the last couple of months, and it always boils down to, it's going to be people who want to be outside of the walled garden. There's going to be people who figure out how to make the technology work no matter what. And then you're going to have the people who always want to have some level of control or power, whether it be, you know, good nature based of like, hey, we need to keep people in quote check. And then there's the other people who are, I just have a hunger power issue. And that's what it always kind of seems like when I watch these different things that we've been talking about over the last couple of months. So from Johnny Mnemonic to Free Guy to Ready Player One, even now to Hack Sign. Like there was a little thing about a power struggle going on in Hack Sign between the Knights and then like what's his name was doing. So it's just always like, I guess this is just us, which always kind of frustrates me. Hey, Trish, thanks for joining us. I don't know if you are a anime. Oh, wow, she left. All right, never mind. 3D, close it out after Amaris.
Yeah, I was just gonna say real quick. Wait, can y'all hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
Oh, okay. So I was gonna say real quick, when like Trek was talking, I just realized this. Yo, so dot hack sign, the person was trapped in the game. Forget like decentralized or centralized. What if before people make the decentralized versions of metaverses popular, again, we already have metaverses that are kinda enough decentralized, kinda like Decentraland, but it's not popular yet. What if like centralized gets it first in popularity? But here's the catch. What if before the decentralized version comes out, Elon's freaking Neuralink or something like it beats us to the punch of decentralization. So we're still stuck on a centralized system. What if the Neuralink becomes so advanced that you can start hooking up coma patients so they can interact in the game, like this storyline? But here's what I was saying gets to the kicker. How is the legal system or even the tax system of any country, let alone the US, how is the IRS going to tax a comatose patient who's making money in the game? That's also like an ethical and just fuck you to the system kind of thing, if you think about it. Like, what if we get comatose patients to get into the metaverse, even if they're stuck on a centralized system? How will it ever be enforced? You can't tax someone who's laying in the hospital.
But can you though? Like, because at this point now we have to reevaluate what does it mean to be conscious? How do we even know if they would understand how to function or interact in that virtual world? Like, there's a whole new set of questions you got to ask about that kind of stuff right there. It's a whole new set of definition, redefining a lot. But yeah, that'd be a crazy scenario though. That'd be Jesus. That'd be great. Like I couldn't even see that in the next 10 years, maybe the next 50. Cause yo,
No,
on some real,
I think if it was prioritized, we could see it within the next 25 years.
okay, 25. All right, cause like the people are already outside. But you know, one of the things I do think is gonna be a part of the whole like virtual world situation, people are going to get lost. Like there's going to be brain damage issues of either people getting totally taken in or people not being able to exit outright. I don't know what part of the timeline that is. Huh?
No, I was saying 40. And even if that didn't happen, say it didn't cause brain damage. Like, once you get immersive like that, you're gonna have like people with like addictive issues that
Yep.
cope by literally living in the game. Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, we got to do the metrics and then we got to close out because we're definitely running on time. So 3D, do you want to lead on the metrics?
I do. I'm going to add in 1 point for you both. Aramis Play Uplift, because they actually have basically a cryptocurrency that can go on and off the game, on chain. And then because of like Flex Cloud Wallet, you could set up a system to actually spend that from within the game in real life. So you could find someone in a comatose state. Hey, Trek, can you mute yourself? So I was getting a major echo. So you can actually charge someone in a comatose state. They can actually charge taxes and things like that to you while you're there, because when you die, they pass it on to any other family member in most countries, including parts of America. Like if you're a Native American, like not Native American, if you're an American citizen that was born in America, but your parents weren't, there is a chance that you might have to take on those bills, fees, or things after they pass away. So that is a real thing that we actually have problems with in America, that, you know, this kind of solves that. It's like right now in parts of Europe, they can charge kids up to 10, as young as 10 years old, taxes up to $1,000 a year. So the possibilities of doing something like that in the future.
With crypto, they might not have access. Like you can have your parents not have access. So how are they going to pay taxes if they don't have
you could pay for it through the game. Like we even see in the game, a guy and his kid are talking about being transferred $5,000 in the actual show or whatever. And I have actually sent money to people in Uplift. They cashed it out and turned it into Bitcoin. But being able to do those actions can be done within the game thanks to API structures, because most of our stuff's online anyways, right? But it could be as simple as like having an app that is a window into the game, so they can just take a picture of a screen of a QR or put their phone over QR, and people in the game would be able to scan it, pay it, interact with it, blah 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 blah. But I got my thing out. I while everybody was talking, because you guys had a really good chat, I actually posted my thing, and so here's the metrics in case everybody forgot. You got UI, UX, hardware, metaversal experience. So UI, I put a 1. We do hear talks about the little, the chat boards and other things and terminals, and we do hear them actually mentioning the UI, and it's very similar to what we have now. It basically sounds like exactly what we had back in XP era. The UX, the user experience, I feel like it's very similar. Like they talk about, well, you have to get out of the game in order to go read the chat boards, and it's like someone on a single monitor, basically. We hear the old coder guy. I forget his name. You were talking about track, but anyways, we hear about him talking about how he's drawing stuff in real life while playing the game, like you do back in the old school stuff, and trying to draw up maps and stuff. And so we do see that their experience in general to the game is what we have nowadays. Hardware, a 1, just because we don't really hear anything about it, but the few glimpses we get of hardware stuff, including like the PCB sketching and stuff, it all seems similar to me. And then metaversal experience, again, a 1, because we actually have games like this. Like I was just playing, I have Elden Ring on my computer. I was actually playing it earlier today. And you can have people go into that game, and you guys can actually go on an adventure. And something that none of us have said so far, but something I was thinking is, I think the game that they're all referencing, I know it's constantly, they're like, oh, so that's how you play the game. Oh, that's how you play the game. I think the game in this case isn't the actual game they're playing. It's the game players play with each other.
That's a good one. But that goes to the thing that I was saying though about like the rule that was a part of the world was, do what you want to do, go on adventures or just come to socialize or just connect with people and like here and there do stuff like. So yeah, but Amira's.
I was gonna say, I do remember some of them doing like adventure quests and stuff, but a lot of it seemed like interactive, immersive chat room kind of thing. I'm gonna have to go against 3D here and say that well, for today's standards, I would rate across the board like a 5, like an average just across the board, because I think it hits all the basics, but it doesn't go above and beyond. Like at the time when anime came out, I would have rated the graphics higher. Now, granted, we're watching an anime, but for back then, that was like smooth, flawless animation. So that would have been a 10. But by today's standards, I would say that's going to be average. Granted, there is metaverses with like really shitty graphics. But I really think that they could do better if they wanted to. So I think with the graphics of this, I would still rate that as average. But the user experience, the user AI, even the hardware. Now, the reason why I would still rate it average is even though the hardware looks like really simple and you think it's just a headset like what we have nowadays that still shows images, like if you really think about it, if it was just that, then you can't technically explain how a comatose patient is in the game. The only way you can explain that technically is if, like I said, the headset was more immersive than just the eyes and the sound, like it read your brain waves. And assuming that it reads your brain waves, I would have to rate that as like average. I mean, maybe by our standards, it would be a 10. But I'm saying, like, say that technology actually existed, like Neuralink was out and it was advanced. Like, this seems pretty average, except for the comatose person, because the fact that they could feel, like, if they had the headset where you could actually feel the pain and the emotions, then I would have to upgrade it to like a 10, because that's like amazing. But assuming that most players didn't feel things like that, because other players didn't actually exhibit it in the anime, it did seem unique to the main character. So that was just a mystery. That's why I would still give it a 5, an average, because I don't think that was a feature that was meant to be. But the only reason why I give it the 5 across the board is because, again, I feel like the anime made the audience fill in the gaps. And if you approach it from a technical side, you can argue that it's just as advanced as current day now, not then, but now, if not slightly a bit more, because of the Neuralink kind of setup. So that's my argument of why I would rate it 5 across the board, out of 10, 1 through 10.
Okay, so I really think we got to get better at like breaking down how we do the metrics on this before we jump into actually saying stuff. It's only one. It's only 1 or 0. It's either on or off.
Oh, my bad.
We don't do mid grounds. There's no.
Okay,
There's
okay,
no
well, what?
variation.
Okay, I heard what you said. Okay, then ones, but yeah, the reason we're doing it is it makes it more difficult on stuff where if you're like, well, I don't know, it's kind of good, but it's kind of not, or it's like this, or it's like you got to make that deciding factor, and a lot of people they will it ends up making them think, and so that's why we went with that method. But I did get from what you're saying, like that it was going to end up being ones across the board too, because yeah, you're right. Like a lot of it was pretty much on par with what we have today. And again, yeah, you're right. Not like it was back then at the time of the early 2000s, but definitely not right now. And I still find it strange. The older the metaversal film has been, whether it's TV or movie or whatever, the more close to reality nowadays it has been. All right, Trek, it's your time for your metrics, bro.
All right, so on the UI, I think. Oh no, that goes to hardware. So, in the user interface, as far as like being inside, yeah, I'm gonna give that a 1, just for like what I see now with like using the Oculus headset and like even just playing around in some of the other spaces and stuff right now. For the user, what's the thing? The UX, the user experience. I'm gonna, if we're talking about just like being able to run around or like fly, like we do all of that stuff now. Granted, we're not like doing these super high speed like fight scenes and stuff like that. But in regards to this particular series, like it was definitely a slow burn series. Like even the fight scenes were slow. The monsters, when I was looking at it, I was like, wow, like this is 2002. This is what people were drawing as monsters back then. Damn. So yeah, so one for the UI, 0 on the UX. Hardware, going to Amir's point about like that whole like it has to be something more than just affecting the input and audio. I mean the input and visual. Sorry, the input of audio and visual. As far as like what this headset was doing. So I don't think we're there. So that's another 0 then. As far as the overall metaversal experience, I do think that we do have places now where if it's you just looking to game and play and be competitive, like we have that. If it's you looking to just go to socialize and network, we have that. And then if you're more in the business acumen and you just want to like figure out how to set up some kind of business thing in a metaverse world, like we have that kind of thing. So I think that is a 1 because that translates. So that's how I'm gonna run it. 1 0 1 1. There we go. And as to close it out, this is Metaverses the Other Side, brought to you here on the Builder DAO Twitter account. My co-host is 3D. Special guest, I'm gonna say, is Amiris, and
We had some other folks come through tonight, which I do appreciate the other folks who did come through. And for those of you listening to it later on, again, like we do this on the Gentlemen of Crypto YouTube channel Fridays at 11 p.m. and our live joints are done on Thursdays at 8 p.m. Both of these are East Coast time. And we do hope that, folks join us for the live stuff. And if you're listening to it later on, hey, leave a comment, do a like, do a share, tell a friend and tell a friend. Again, we stay away from the price talk. We do geek out. We don't cap about that. And hopefully something we said gets you thinking and gets you more interested. And so 3D, if you could close it out, sir.
Hey, everyone else might have said cash, crypto, or cards, but we definitely take your heart for free. Everybody enjoy.
Later.